president, Nero of Mar-a-Lago, a.k.a. Donald Trump, is capping off 2020 in true Trumpian fashion, putting an end to a self-created crisis only after he fiddled while real economic relief for millions of Americans burned. On the heels of a holiday week that brought a surge of Americans to food banks, an unnecessary uncertainty over a much-needed COVID economic relief plan, Trump deigned to provide assistance to struggling Americans after hijacking it for what it turns out to be no reason at all. Relenting last night and signing into law an aid package that he personally held up for a week after calling it a disgrace in a theatrical video that closed with Trump's latest election delusions. Now, Trump claimed that he would work tirelessly over his Christmas holiday, but instead, he went golfing in Florida and kept on golfing at his private resort as unemployment benefits expired for 14 million Americans on Saturday while he held the bill in limbo. And it wasn't just Trump. The entire King's Road court was on vacay while Americans suffered. Vice President Mike Pence was hitting the slopes in Vail, Colorado. And Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin was in Mexico at a resort home that he owns there. Let them eat cake, said Marie Antoinette. In a signing statement after he belatedly put his Sharpie signature on the relief bill, Trump said that he got some nebulous concessions that actually don't mean anything. And he claimed that Congress would focus on his fantasy claims of voter fraud. But since he'd already signed the bill into law, that means, in English, he got nothing. Now, of course, Trump could have advocated for $2,000 stimulus checks much sooner, but instead he chose to rage about trying to overturn the election. And tonight, the Democratic-led House voted to give Trump exactly what he asked for and what Democrats wanted in the first place, stimulus payments of $2,000 instead of $600. The Washington Post reported Trump's decision to throw a wrench into the deal that his own Treasury Secretary negotiated was his alone. One official briefed on the matter, saying he's just angry at everybody and wants to inflict as much pain on Congress as possible. Just Congress? Well, Axios noted that behind the scenes, getting the cranky, stubborn president to belatedly sign the COVID relief bill was like being a hostage negotiator or defusing a bomb. At this point, it appears that even the House of Murdoch, after years of propping up Trump's foolishness, is skittering away from him. In an op-ed asking Trump to give it up and stop trying to overturn the election, the New York tabloid's editorial writers offered this advice. If you want to cement your influence, even set the stage for a future return, you must channel your fury into something more productive. If you insist on spending your final days in office threatening to burn it all down, that will be how you're remembered, not as a revolutionary, but as the anarchist holding the match. I'm joined now by Michelle Goldberg, columnist for the New York Times, Susan Del Percio, Republican strategist and senior advisor to the Lincoln Project, and Jason Johnson, professor of journalism and politics at Morgan State University. And Michelle, I sort of chuckle at the, at House Murdoch sort of backing away and saying this will be how you're remembered. Not the tying, throwing children into cages and taking them from their mommies and daddies and letting 330,000 people die. It'll be for holding up this bill. I wonder what you make of this entire last, 72 hours of madness.
Well, I would say a couple of things. I mean, I feel like you hear a lot of Republicans as they're trying to deal with Trump in the, kind of tantrum-laden downhill stage of his presidency, pretend that he has this great legacy that's going to be marred by this behavior, as if this behavior hasn't been ongoing for 4 years. I would say that, look, if Donald Trump was at all serious about wanting those $2,000 checks, he should really be talking to Senate Republicans, right? Because obviously Nancy Pelosi took yes for an answer. And, I think that Donald Trump was right about the $2,000 for the wrong reasons. I don't think that Donald Trump is actually interested in the welfare of the American people. If he was, he wouldn't have held up this bill, which means that people are going to get 10 weeks of expanded unemployment instead of 11 weeks because it ran out and has to be restarted. Nevertheless, I think that Democrats should leverage this, sort of grandiosity of Trump's and start demanding that Republicans, particularly Republicans in the Senate, give the president what they want. And if they don't, and I've said this before, it is really, really interesting that that is the line that Republicans won't cross for Trump, right? That any, sexual assault is okay with them. Extorting a foreign power is okay with them. Attempting a coup, asking for too much money for struggling Americans is where Mitch McConnell cannot go any, that's where he stops.
You're absolutely right. I mean, Jason, my political scientist friend, what's so remarkable is that Donald Trump's sort of magical power is doing what Republicans want to do anyway. Like, the only things that he's capable of doing are things that they already want to do, like cut rich people's taxes and deregulate oil companies, or doing things they don't give a damn about, like locking up little kids and taking them from their moms. Like, they don't care about that. So if they don't care about it, he can do it. If it's cruel and crazy and it's sucking up to Putin, they don't care. They're like, it's fine. Some oligarchs like us, too. It's cool, right? It's a white ethno state. Fine. Anything he wants to do, cuddle up to Nazis, we don't care about that. But don't try to spend money and give it to regular people. I wonder if, just from a political science point of view, might this be a lesson to Democrats to just stick with your opening? Because Democrats wanted $2,000 in the beginning. And now Trump says, I want it too. Why doesn't he just, as Michelle said, force Republicans to keep on being supplicants and doing what Trump tells them?
I completely agree, Joy. And here's the thing. Democrats always need to learn more about how to play hardball, and it seems like they only want to play hardball with each other. Like, they'd rather scream and yell at their far left and far right wings than be as hardcore as they can be against the actual Republican Party. That's part of the challenge that they're always facing. But I got to tell you, ultimately, $2,000 in and of itself isn't the greatest thing in the world. Like, that may or may not necessarily change anybody's life. So I think it's important for the party as a whole to remember that even if you somehow run into these obstacles in the Senate, and the Senate says, hey, we're not going to pass this one way or another, telling your average American that $2,000 once a month or twice a month or something else like that is going to save them from COVID won't be enough. The Democrats need to go much bolder with this, because that amount of money is not going to help people get out of the debt that COVID has put them into, let alone allow them to survive over the next couple of months.
Well, no, it's true. And every other, civilized country, every civilized country in the world is giving people like $2,000 a month and giving people a monthly check to stay home. That's how you do it if you're logical. But, I have to go to you, Susan, on this. Let me play for you. This is Adam Kinzinger and Pat Toomey, two of Trump's supplicants, right? They haven't lifted a finger to do anything about Trump all this time. Here they are talking about the bill.
To play this old switcheroo game, which is just kind of like, I don't get the point. I don't understand what's being done. Why? Unless it's just to create chaos and show power and be upset because you lost the election. Otherwise, I don't understand it.
I understand he wants to be remembered for advocating for big checks, but the danger is he'll be remembered for chaos and misery and erratic behavior if he allows this to expire.
Susan, you know what Pat Toomey will be remembered for, if any, other than just being a Tea Partier, is he's the guy who tried to shut down the ability of the future the Biden administration to do PPP. So he'll be remembered for. He also held the bill up. What is happening?
I can't explain it. There's no way to, frankly. I would say Adam Kinzinger has been outspoken against the president before. But I think there's a few interesting plays here right now.
What?
One, talking about the New York Post, I think that was not a message to Donald Trump at all. I think it was a message to other Republicans and party leaders, especially, in New York and other places, that you can take cover under us. I think that they said enough is enough, and I think that's Murdoch's way of doing it. I also think that it'd be very interesting to know what Donald Trump is saying to Mitch McConnell right now. Is he saying, you better take that up for a vote, Mitch, or otherwise I'm not going to Georgia on January 4th. I'm curious if that will happen. And it is a very good likelihood, because Donald Trump just wants to get the $2,000 because he wants to say, I won and you lost. And that's how he's operating. Can't explain the behavior of a psychopath who feels no empathy towards the American public, because that's what he is. That's what a psychopath does. He's a functioning psychopath, and he can lure people in but he has no empathy, and he gets off on hurting other people and showing or looking strong, and he just doesn't care. So this is his last hurrah, supposedly. Maybe, he wants to incite violence on January 6th. That's a danger to our country, which is probably what he'll be most remembered for. And he will then go away back to Mar-a-Lago until he has to go up to New York and face the music up there with 2 cases pending in New York State and New York City.
Rapid fire for the 3 of you, and I'll start with you, Michelle. Marco Rubio went after Dr. Fauci. He's still playing the Trumpian game, got leveled by Vin Gupta, by the way. Dr. Gupta laid him out. But which incentives are stronger at this point for somebody like Rubio, who clearly still wants to be president, still nurses delusions of grandeur? Because he seems to have made the calculation that staying under Trump's warm belly is the way to do it. And then you've got, to Susan's point, people who may try to break away, thinking that, the House of Murdoch can protect them if they decide to go the other way. Which looks like the stronger kind of incentive structure for Republicans going forward?
It's hard to say what the incentive structure is, in part because you have a collective action problem, right? I mean, if enough Republicans got together and said we're no longer going to be cowed by this lunatic who has led our party to presidential defeat and who will likely be a bad candidate in 2024, they could do it. The problem is Donald Trump was actually right, I think, when he took the measure of many of his opponents in 2016 and kind of accurately diagnosed their weakness and their failure to stand up to him. And so you see, I think that the behavior you see from Marco Rubio right now might be because he wants to be president, but it's why he isn't president, right? It's kind of why he was so easily defeated by Donald Trump.
Yep. Yeah, because he's a phony. He's whatever he thinks he has to be to win. Same thing to you, Jason, because, look, you do have a party that, Lindsey Graham did say if we nominate Trump, he'll destroy us and we'll deserve it. And they now seem to be sort of making that happen on their own, Republicans, because they don't seem to know which way to go. None of them is him. None of them has a celebrity background to fall back on. Even this junior can't be him. I don't understand what they think the incentive structure is. Do you?
Enjoy. And this is the thing. This is a very unique change in American politics. Donald Trump is going to be, his legacy is that everybody's going to have to study this man for the next 100 years. The Republican Party is absolutely foolish if they think they can recreate, I wouldn't call this lightning in a bottle, maybe poison, maybe toxicity, maybe Trump, I don't know, white nationalism at the bottom. They can't recreate it. We've seen everybody else who's tried to act like Donald Trump has failed to be successful, whether they're running for, sort of any sort of executive position, whether they're going for governor, et cetera, et cetera. They don't tend to get that far. They're not necessarily all that successful. So the Republican Party needs to think long and hard about, okay, look, Trump is going to be out of office soon, no matter what we play to. And he is not a reliable surrogate going forward. So they need to realize that their future needs to be in taking the parts of Trumpism that were effective, lower taxes, naked racism, gerrymandering, and make that their campaign. Because if they try and make it based on his personality, they will ultimately fail. Now, are those things good for American politics? Not at all. They haven't been good for American politics at any particular point. But from a strategic standpoint, that's where they got to go. And Rubio can't figure that out. Fox News won't do that for them. They're going to have to do it with Newsmax and OAN and online things because they cannot rely on Trumpism in and of itself from that man to have their party be successful in the future.
And last word to you, Susan. You've got 2 choices here. You've got the Marie Antoinette Republicans like Mike Pence and Mnuchin who are all flitting off into the sunshiny vacation spots, right? And then you've got Trump saying, no, be a populist, give people $2,000, the sort of Venezuelan version of politics. Which way do you think Senate Republicans wind up going? Do they go for the $2,000 or do they remain on high?
I think that McConnell's going to be forced to take a vote, and Republicans are going to go for the $2,000. I think they have to at this point because they are afraid of Trump. The future of the party, Jason's right, it's not Donald Trump because only Trump can beat Trump. These other elected officials, they will have to be primaried, be challenged, or lose their seats like Marco Rubio should in 2022, and then the party will rebuild from there.
Yeah, I will quote Ayanna Pressley's amazing tweet where she said, Mitch better have my money. I think that's what a lot of Americans are saying right now. Michelle Goldberg, Susan Del Percio, Dr. Jason Johnson, Google it, the rest of y'all. Up next on the ReadOut, what we're learning about